start on this computer. Hey, how's it going, guys? For this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast, I have Kelli Schutrop with me. She comes from Parqa, which is a digital marketing agency really focused on the niche of the recruiting and the staffing industry. So I know, I've actually have multiple LinkedIn posts, articles. Digital marketing is going to probably be one of the biggest things in the next 5 years in the staffing and recruiting world. So really just, brought Kelli on to kind of help us understand a little more about what to do, how to do it, and the things that we need to participate in to make sure that our agencies are moving ahead and our recruiting skill sets are moving ahead. So whether you're an agency owner, a solo entrepreneur, or even an internal recruiter, digital marketing is the future, and you need to make sure you understand it. So Kelli, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you here.
Hey, Benjamin, thanks for having me.
Want to go ahead and get started. First of all, I know that you're solely focused on the recruiting space, but how did you get into digital marketing and how did you get into recruiting?
That's a great question. I mean, just like everybody, I kind of fell into this particular industry on the recruiting and staffing side. But quick mini background. So I actually studied marketing and public relations in college.
Okay.
Something that I always wanted to get into ever since high school, just fascinated me. And then went to a large ad agency that was industry agnostic, working with the mammoths of the world right out of school, and got some cool exposure to what it was like working with big brands.
Okay.
But then pretty quickly shifted to be focused on the agency brand itself. So I got into brand management and just fell in love. And it's funny because within about a year, I was introduced to someone who had her own IT recruiting company.
Okay.
And it was just her. And through a network connection, she was like, God, I need marketing. I don't know what that means, but I need it. Somebody introduced me and we just hit it off. And I saw the opportunity to really get my arms around her marketing from soup to nuts, right? From website, social, PR. So I joined her team, started building out her marketing. And then pretty quickly after that, she said, all right, I'm now to the point where I need to hire another recruiter. Do you want to learn the business or should I hire someone else? And, here I am, maybe a year and a half out of college, and nobody knows about the staffing and recruiting industry until you fall into it. And so I said, sure, let's check it out, right? Just kind of get my arms around it. So I started sourcing, the whole world of Boolean searches and filling placements. And then we merged with an RPO company. So I went on site and started working directly with hiring managers. Not many people know this background in my career because I don't talk about it a lot, but it gave me a huge appreciation for the recruiting industry. And I realized that while I have immense appreciation for it, I just missed the marketing side so much. And so ultimately she got recruited to a larger company in the Minneapolis market, and they needed a marketer. So they pulled me with, and I became their marketing manager. And so anyway, really from nearly day one, I guess call it year one out of school, for the last over 10 years now, I've focused specifically on the staffing and recruiting industry, doing marketing, reporting to CEOs, helping to build the brand, manage teams, manage agencies. And then our executive search and consulting firm actually started Parqa, which is a digital.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. We realized the vast importance of building your brand and getting found online and driving leads. And then we realized, you know what? Everybody else out there is trying to figure out how to do this too. And that company has seen years of 50% of their revenue coming to them from inbound marketing sources. This is at that time, primarily permanent, executive search company. So clients finding them online.
Wait,
and so
can you say that one more time? I just want to make sure everybody caught that.
Yeah. So they have experienced years of 50% of their total revenue on the perm side, on the client side of perm,
that's
coming to them
incredible.
On marketing. It's insane. And that's ebbed and flowed over the years naturally. They've got an impressive group of recruiters that have built great brands for themselves. But we found that by doubling down on, the website and SEO and paid advertising and social and all of these cool things, ultimately marketing and technology and people, we saw a huge lift ourselves. And so that's when we created Parqa to really help train and educate and come alongside other recruiting and staffing firm leaders who are trying to do the same. And so, my role for the last number of years has just been really fun, where I get to talk to business leaders in this space and find out what's working, what's not working, and help to kind of give some ideas, and so anyway, I just nerd out about the topic. It's something that I
I
grew up within.
I totally love that you actually spend time in the recruiting chair. Like you understand the pain points, you understand the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, the highs, the lows,
Yes.
the excitement of a placement.
Yeah.
So, and then move like so like you know, and I love also that your marketing company, digital marketing company that you're working for is actually part of an executive
Yeah.
search firm. So like talk about knowing the space and
Yeah.
ins and outs.
And we sit within it currently. So they've got a pretty strong HR consulting division and then strong permanent placement, multiple different areas of focus. And yeah, all in the same office. So when we do monthly meetings, we get to hear about who's billing the most and what kind of collaboration is going on. And so yeah, I've just got a big appreciation for that job you and everybody who's listening has, where both sides of your spectrum could move at any time. No one else sells something that can change on them. You've got the candidate side and the client side, and then your branding, and yeah. And then from a marketing perspective, it's its own animal because you need to attract clients. Depending on the business model, whether it's staffing or certain types of search, you need to attract clients through marketing. And then you also want to attract great internal talent, right? Like
Hmm.
as you're growing, you need to scale with more recruiters and people on your leadership team. So
Yep. Well,
yeah.
let's start off here. Like uh, you know, digital marketing is a huge future in the recruiting industry.
Mhm.
Somebody that's looking at just trying to understand it and get started, what kind of advice would you have for them?
Yeah, it's funny when it comes to the basics, for the last number of years, everybody knows that you need to have a website, you need to be active on social, blogging's important, you should have an email newsletter. Those things have been around for a long time. But what we're finding is that some people started with the basics, but then kind of let them get a little lax over the years. So
I
I
can see
would
that.
say one really important thing is just look at your website as though you are your client or your potential client or your potential candidate. Like, is it all jargon? Like, do you have to scroll way down to even find out what you specialize in? Like, do you have what we call practice area pages that say if you're an IT recruiter, like what roles those are? Because this industry is one that people could set up a shop in their garage, make their site look good, and that website can look identical to a company that has 40 employees if they don't have a face on it. And it's nuts. So bringing in like actual client testimonials and like who are your recruiters and like what's the flavor that they bring to this process. And so some of the basics I would say is just like reevaluate your website. Is it
Okay.
stuck in the past? Is it actually more than a brochure? Like, is it able to be a salesperson for you? Because it's the only thing that never goes to sleep at night. And then the other thing I would say is be mindful of how you are interacting with your audience. Like everybody
Okay.
used to blog for the sake of blogging, and that's no longer helpful anymore. Like if you tell me that you need to attract clients and everything you blog about is top 5 interview tips, like that doesn't help, right? And so anyway, I think it's more just reevaluate what you're doing and say, if I were the person I'm trying to get in front of, would I be able to?
Okay. Cool. Where do you see the digital marketing going in the recruiting space over the next 5 years?
Yeah, yeah. There's actually a really interesting top 10 staffing technology trends list out there floating around right now. It was created by Maurice Fuller, who founded Staffing Tech. And we actually just highlighted it on Parqa's LinkedIn. And it's one of those things where there's so much coming down the pipeline. We talk about things like websites and blogs, and everybody's like, yeah, 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 been there, done that. And marketing automation is something that has been a discussion point for the last few years. Basically being able to automate processes. So we
Oh,
used to have everybody was in phone books and everybody was looking at billboards, and now, not now, then everybody was doing Boolean searches, and then now you're getting to this point where autonomous staffing is going to start happening, where you are having those really interesting key conversations with candidates, and then they get into your system, but instead of having to do another search to find them, the direction this industry is going is that the technology will be so sophisticated that you just input what you want and it will recognize the top candidates and message them for you. And so then
oh,
recruiters start to really focus on those high touch efforts. And I don't know that every single nuance of this industry is going to adopt it. Someone who's doing light industrial hourly staffing is always going to have a different approach than someone doing executive level retained search.
Oh
But
yeah.
some of those things around, yeah, autonomous staffing and even marketing automation to stay in front of people that you don't have time to, and provide them with thought leadership, like those are some of the things I'd say pay attention to. Sense,
Uh,
hear fish, stuff like that.
I know the discussion around AI is always like the AI is coming, it's coming, it's gonna like hurt everybody, it's gonna be there to save the day, it's gonna be there to like actually, make it so we have more meaningful conversations and actually
Right.
bring the human touch in there.
Mhm.
But when you say like, fully autonomous staffing, I've actually I think Amazon is doing that in some of their warehouses where people are
Yeah.
actually getting hired and show up at work and they've never actually
Yeah.
touched or dealt with a single human being until they show up.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because in the spirit of learning more about this, I recently hosted a fireside chat with Maurice Fuller, who created that list,
Okay.
top 10 trends list for staffing technology. And when I asked him, like, do you think recruiters should be nervous about this or happy? His take is actually it's a really good thing because most recruiters don't get into the business and go, man, I wish I could do Boolean searches all day. Like, man, I wish I could just source all the candidates. It's like the thing that's exciting is having the meaningful conversations. And so, yeah, some industries are going to the point where it's fully autonomous, and some are just going to use technology to be more efficient in their processes. And yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Amazon because you think about your interactions with a company like Amazon, you never talk to a human unless all of the other mechanisms didn't work. And so it'll just be interesting to see how we went from boots on the ground, handshakes, business cards, phone calls to emails, to in-mails, to texts, and like
Mhm.
where things are going. It's just becoming there's just more automation coming. But I don't think that means that recruiters will go away because there's so much human touch that is very important.
Yeah, no, with you on that. I mean, I love the conversations. I mean, that's always the highlight of,
Yeah.
on top of making placements,
Right.
it
Right.
is the highlight of this job. But when you say marketing automation, I
Yeah.
want to make sure that everybody understands that. What is marketing automation? Because I think I know what it is. I absolutely love it, being a little ADHD, and it like automatically follows up with people. But
Yep.
like when you talk about it, what is marketing automation?
Yeah, sure. And it's funny because it does mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And so at the highest level, it ultimately says the actions that you would love to take one-on-one with someone, we're just going to automate those. So as an example, let's say that your company produces a salary guide. Okay, this thing is great. It's got some trending article information. It's got salary information. There's some info about your company at the end. You're going to get it in front of potential clients, potential candidates, push it out through social, paid, all these things, right?
Hmm.
Let's say somebody downloads this thing. It's on a gated form on your website. They
Okay.
download it. And you've seen, okay, cool. Bob Jones at company XYZ downloaded it. I would love for Bob Jones to be a client. I've already tried to market in candidates or, all of the things that you've tried to
Hmm.
do. But now what? Like I've got that name. I could follow up individually and say, hey, Bob, thanks for downloading that. I see you've got some searches on your site. Like, let's have a conversation. Uh, and then that might happen once or twice, and then you're on to the next thing. And Bob Jones knows about you, kind of, but Bob Jones is on to the next thing. But what if you were to have this system that basically says, all right, for the next couple of months, every few weeks, we're going to serve Bob Jones something else that's relevant to the first thing that he downloaded, whether it's a webinar on demand that he can check out, or an infographic, or an interesting article. And it's not meant to be a sales thing, it's meant to be a nurturing thought leadership thing. And
Okay.
you always give the option for him to engage with you and schedule a call. But the goal is basically, in that particular example of a workflow, to nurture the relationship to the point where once he has a need, he's thinking about you. But there's literally thousands of workflow possibilities, and this is just expanding. One other one I'll mention is, let's say you do high level consulting and you've
Hmm.
got consultants out in the field, and you think about how many touch points a recruiter needs to maintain with them. And then when they're done with their contract, but you don't have something else for them, they're going to pick your competitor if they've got an opportunity. But if you can do a really cool alumni consultant
Oh,
campaign, like there's just so much you could do. So that's a
that's
few
actually that's super
examples.
smart.
Yeah, it basically just automates the process, but tangibly, it looks like it's coming from you. And if somebody replies, it can come directly into your inbox. It just kind of makes you more efficient, and it gives them better touch points and more meaningful information that
I
you remember to do.
I use that stuff all the time on the candidate side. I'm in the GovCon space, so full scope poly people are hard to get a hold of. But I'll have like 3, 4, or 5 messages set up in a marketing automation sequence, and I'll have end up by the end of it, we'll have like 80, 90% open rates and 50, 60% like reply rates, even if they're no sometimes. But that's where marketing automation is how I can outperform many of my competitors in the space.
Right, right, right. And it's something where even simple email marketing tools like Constant Contact are starting to provide drip campaigns. And then when you think about not this industry, there's a whole world of marketing automation platforms like HubSpot and Infusionsoft and Pardot and Marketo, and sky's the limit. But then when you shift focuses and think about the staffing and recruiting industry, everybody needs an ATS, and not every marketing automation platform plays nice with an ATS. And so that creates a unique challenge that marketers who don't know this space may not realize. And so that's why things like Herefish, where people that came out of Bullhorn created it and then got reacquired into it, and it's connected, or people like Sense that they get the staffing space so well, and are starting to build out all of those integrations. I think that that's the future of where this is going. You hear about cool things that Luxo is doing, or Zoho, or even Job Diva. I'm starting to hear more about lately. Like they're all trying to compete with like what Bullhorn is building. And Bullhorn is trying to, or is really right now becoming just kind of the single shop for all of these types of integrations. But I don't think they're going to be the only one playing that space for very long.
Yeah, no, definitely following. Bullhorn is one of the gorillas in the space.
Right.
So kind of like flipping a little bit into a little bit about you. I know, you've done recruiting, you're a little bit on the sales side, but you're having fun on the marketing aspect. I like to ask everybody kind of how their daily habits are, kind of some of the things that are setting themselves up for success on a daily basis. What are some of those things for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a pretty detail oriented person. I tend to be a measure 3 times, cut once kind of mentality, as opposed to, ready, fire, then aim kind of mentality. And everything works, right? Everything makes companies grow, but I tend to be more detailed. So even in the last number of years, when my primary focus has been marketing, I've always got a to-do list. Everybody has a to-do list. But one of the things that really helps me is, breaking out my day by scheduling those work times and then maintaining them as though you would a meeting. Like if I'm in this conversation with you right now and another email pops into my inbox, it's waiting, right? Mm-hmm. And so my goal is to be that disciplined with things that I need to get done. And now that I've moved into more of a sales consultancy role over the last number of years, and I have a calendar link that could just sit open and people could schedule time, and I could be plugging away on something, and all of a sudden in 20 minutes, I've got a meeting. I've learned to block off larger times. And if I need to eat into them with meetings that I really want to have and make sense to have, then I do that. But yeah, I would say alongside that, one of the biggest things is just having no matter what, these 2 or 3 things are going to happen today. And like, there's going to be a flurry of everything else that comes in. There's a ton of stuff always on the back burner, but do or die, this is going to happen. And then I would say one additional element, in my calendar itself, I color code. So if I've got a meeting with someone who is interested in Parqa's digital services, it's green. If I've got a meeting with a current client, it's pink. And if it's something networking related like this, it's yellow. Everything else is just the normal blue. But then as I look through my week, if I start getting opportunities for networking and it's like a ton, then I have to realize like, okay, maybe that one will wait till next week. And then the first 15 minutes of my day is where I put my reminders, what a lot of people would use as their tasks in their CRM and their ATS. That's something that for me has been really helpful. It's like,
I think what you said is super important, because in the recruiting space, like everything is a fire. You're running around like from here to there to here to there, but very few recruiters in the space, I've externally, internally, I've done both, actually keep a schedule and a calendar that controls their day. It's just like whatever comes in is like that, like woohoo.
Right. And sometimes there are things that cause that, that like you got a few things in the back of your mind that if this thing comes through, everything else gets to be second priority, but you can't do that with everything. And I also reset my list every evening before I roll into the next day, so that coming into it, I know. And you get emails over the evening too, and sometimes that shifts by the time you get it in the morning. But I just keep it literally as a email draft
Okay.
open in my Outlook, and that becomes my rolling to-do list. So it's easy to modify and can do it on the fly.
And kind of flipping to that a little bit, another question I ask everybody is like, what is your favorite book, the book that's had the most impact on either your career or most impact on you recently?
That's a good question. So there's a fascinating book. It's been out there for a long time. You've probably heard of it. It's called The 4 Hour Work Week. And
Yes.
it's both a fascinating, exciting book and a super challenging book for someone like me, because I like to do things efficiently. I like to clip along, and that phrase of an achiever, that's something that I identify with. And so when I first started reading this book, and I'm actually still working through it, and I know it's been out a long time, but it's something that the premise is, oh, you should be able to do all your work in less time, and you don't fill it up with more work. You just use 20% of your time to do 80% of what you need to do. In normal USA day-to-day life, that's not practical from an employer standpoint. So I'm not necessarily proposing everybody should go out and trim down their weeks to 4 hours. But some of the things that really stood out to me are just the concepts of, what are you doing with your time? And does it matter? And he talks about the old rich and the new rich, and how everybody wants to retire being millionaire, multimillionaire. And they kind of defer the excitement in their life until after retirement. Like, okay, I'm cranking now, I'm working so hard so that when I retire, I get to do the fun things. And his argument, if you will, is people don't actually care about being a millionaire. People care about the lifestyle it gains you, whether that's trying new experiences or travel or whatever. And so the concept of the new rich, with air quotes that you can't see because this is a podcast, is do the things you want now as you go along, so that you have that fulfillment, but you're still doing great work. So anyway, it just challenges me to focus on the things that matter, and interplace, or whatever that word would be, like intersect my life with travel as I go, and with things that are exciting to me.
And for people that haven't read the book, I love that book. I've actually read it twice.
That's great.
He wrote that after working 90 hours a week for a while. So I know like everybody hears a 4-hour work week, you're like, I can do everything 4 hours. Like he got there through learning lessons.
He also basically has created companies that are self-sufficient. So
Oh yeah.
he can just kind of jump in, tweak it, and it keeps rolling. And like that premise of having passive income that's happening behind the scenes, whether it's investments in real estate or investments in other companies, that's just a wise concept. But even just day to day, like, is what I'm doing right now great because I'm doing it fast, or is it great because it actually matters? Like, is this on my list because somebody else put it there, or because it's actually going to help me accomplish my goals and help my company accomplish its goals? And if it's not, does it need to be there? Maybe not. So.
And I think that's great. And you still talked a little bit about travel. Is there a place that you want to go post all this storm?
No, that's a great question. So my husband and I both really enjoy travel, and we've done some cool trips like Europe, New Zealand, the Azores over the last number of years. And being in the industry that I'm in, and the industry that you're in, we have conferences. And so even things like the national staffing conferences and recruiting conferences that come up allow me to travel. But I'm really excited about the premise at some point to spend more of an extended period of time in Portugal and Greece when this all blows over. I think that would be a load of fun to spend a couple months. And so it's not on the books right now, schedule wise, and with everything happening with the pandemic, but we'll get there eventually.
Combination of the 4-hour work week, how work has shifted since the pandemic, it could be on the schedule soon.
It's true. Yeah, but it is fun. I see that in a lot of staffing and recruiting firm leaders and owners, is travel is just a good way to get out of your day to day and do something enjoyable, whether it's a weekend in a different state or a week or 2 weeks somewhere abroad. Yeah. Definitely a passion of mine.
Can't wait to travel again.
Yeah.
So want to kind of finish up this awesome interview. One of the things that I believe is, with digital marketing, placements are important. Like, is there like one or two, three action steps that people can utilize now in the digital marketing world to actually get new placements over the next 30, 60, 90 days?
Great question. Great question. So it's funny. I would say LinkedIn is becoming more of a digital handshake than ever before. And I'm
Okay.
not talking about, you know, slamming out in mails and just kind of, like the classic things that you do to get in front of a ton of people. I mean, building your own brand, right? Because just like in digital marketing, um, recruiting can be seen as a commodity, right? Like there's a million digital agencies. Okay, there's a million staffing and recruiting firms. There's a million people that specialize in just about anything you could possibly think about, and even just what you're doing by creating a podcast, and like things like that, where you're having conversations with people and you're learning and they're learning from you. Why not share that with the world? And the more that you can become a thought leader in the space that you specialize in, the more it will help ultimately your end person, whether it's your client or your candidate. And so I would say that's the number one thing. Like if you're spending all your time on all of the hustle, right? Like you can't really stop the hustle, but at the same time, like you can work a little bit smarter. And even ever since I got into this role, like we're a digital company. We've specialized in that for ourselves too. So we get a lot of inbound conversations through things that we're doing, different marketing strategies. But even in the last year and a half, a lot of the conversations we're having happen because somebody happens to see something I'm sharing or interacting with someone else on LinkedIn. And so
That's
I
how
would
we
say,
got connected.
yes, it is. Exactly. And so I would say double down on you, double down on your brand, but tailor it in a way that's going to resonate with the audience you need to get in front of. I think
Okay.
that's powerful, whether it's, blogs, ebooks, podcasts, just a post, get into video, like all kinds of stuff you can do.
Awesome. So real quick, would there be anything else that you would want to say to the listeners?
Oh, good question. Wow. Trick question. Let's see. uh, you know, I would just say continue to be authentic in whatever you're doing. Like your clients and your candidates know that this is a business. They know what you're trying to accomplish. Like if they use recruiters, they have an appreciation for where you're coming from. But I've just got to pay it forward mentality. It's something that has been extended to me so many times, and I appreciate extending it to others. And so even if somebody isn't the right fit, like give them a few minutes. Like you hear all the time, candidates getting ghosted, and you can't possibly stay individual contact with every person in your database. Like there's no way. But if you're putting somebody out at an interview, like just I would say, like, put good out into the world. Like it doesn't hurt anything, right? If you can spend a few more minutes just paying it forward when it makes sense, it'll come back around, and yeah, make
Well,
everybody's world a happier place.
well, Kelli, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This has been a phenomenal interview, and thank you so much for sharing about the world of digital marketing, the future of digital marketing, and how it's going to impact our lives in the recruiting and staffing world for the next like 5, 10, 15 years.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Benjamin. Great to be here.